So for today, for Deep Insights, we're going to talk about tariffs and M&A. Um, we've had a lot of M&A activity in the firm recently, and this is purely anecdotal, right? so, um, so, and I see your question on celebrating wins, so I'll go over that as well, Jeff. Thank you for asking that. Um, so let I want to talk to you a little bit about M&A. We've seen an uptick in M&A activity at the firm, representing sellers, are we representing buyers right now? We're mostly representing sellers. No, actually, no. We've got one M&A project, a pretty big one actually, where we're representing the purchaser um, in that particular acquisition. But it's very interesting when representing the seller and our client is the seller. It really gives you a sense of, remember that conversation we had about in to on? It gives you a sense of just how much people have been working in their business versus working on their business. In some ways, it is extremely helpful, but in other ways, it is damaging to them setting things up from an on the business type of work that really positions it for a favorable sell. And I'm saying this because when you work on the business, as you go through that M&A process, that acquisition process, it is so much easier to position yourself to sell, to make yourself attractive. And here's the other thing. When you work on your business, the parts of working on your business that you feel like maybe you're feeling a little bit not so wonderful about, you're feeling like maybe you'll be judged. What's so interesting to me is those who really spent time working on the business, the buyers care less and less about the areas that you might be feeling a little bit um, vulnerable about. And it's really interesting, but I can get into that a little bit more. I want to make sure I'm talking about this tariff portion of it because this is something new that is coming up when it comes to M&A. So most of the business owners that we deal with and the businesses in general that we deal with, they're not looking to have their business just die. Even if they started it because this is the type of work they did, and then they left employment and started their own company and they decided to offer those services. Gee, I sound like I'm talking about myself, right? And this law firm. Um, Even in those instances, people are not typically just thinking that they're building something so that they can have a job, right? It may start out that way for some. For many others from the beginning, they know they want it to be more than just owning a job. But even for those who start out saying, well, I just want to be able to feed myself and pay my bills and live the life I want, a lot of times it grows into something deeper and more meaningful because they realize that the owning it part of it is a responsibility all in of itself. And then as people get deeper into it, they realize whatever they are building that creates sustainable and recurring income for themselves on terms that they enjoy and prefer is actually something of value to other people, even if they are no longer involved in it. Now, a lot of times when people don't plan for the end of their business, what happens is it just slowly kind of retracts and retracts. There's fewer sales, it slows down, and then eventually it ends, right? And that ending could be they just walk away. It could be that they have a serious accident or something happens and they can't work in it and it just dies and they don't restart it. It could be because they die. Literally, this happens. Um, and in all of those instances, there is opportunity before you get to that point to position your business in a way where it is valuable. We had a situation where we actually purchased the part of a business, another law firm, where the law firm owner unexpectedly passed away. And we were connected to her husband, who wanted to find the right firm uh, to explore an acquisition with. This is not something that that owner thought about, but because the business was built in a certain way, it made it something valuable so that this father and his young children could be in a position to have some support and have a continuing contribution from his wife even after she passed away. We've had it where owners suddenly realize that they just don't want to do this anymore. They spent all of this time and they felt like, well, what was this all for? And they came to realize, hey, this is valuable. I can walk away, and I can walk away in a better position than I ever imagined. Now, there's a couple of ways you could do a sale. You could sell it to a third party you don't know. You can transition it to a team member and sell it that way. That's a very common way. I don't recommend the third option of just letting it sort of fade into nothing, right? Because you're just allowing value to leak out of this thing that you built, and you deserve something better. It deserves something better. So, my view is reality is most businesses don't die because they fail. I don't actually believe that. I believe they die because of lack of planning many times, right? And when I say die, I don't mean that the business ends intentionally. I mean an unwanted death. That's kind of what I mean. So here's what you need to know about tariffs and the M&A trends. Reporting is in. We've gotten a really deep report on the impact of tariffs on M&A trends. And I like to get these reports and review them because I talked about how we're seeing an uptick in M&A activity in terms of our clientele, but that's anecdotal. That's not really giving us the type of information that we need. Who is it affecting? How is it affecting them? What is it doing in terms of access to credit? What is it doing in terms of being able to complete due diligence? What is it doing in terms of long-term contracts? Long-term contracts are a huge deal when it comes to purchasing a business. And are people exercising options to terminate those contracts? On what grounds, right? How is it affecting the buying and selling of businesses, whether it's the business entity itself or all of the assets of the business, or all of the assets and debts of the business, right? All or substantially all is usually the terminology we use in the United States. So we've gotten that report. We're still breaking it down and looking at it. And I expect that we'll put out some guidance that we think is most relevant for our clientele. But looking at these type of things, remember we talked about from in your business to on your business, taking the time to look at these type of reports and understand, well, how does it affect clients? How does it affect what they might be dealing with? And what do we need to adjust? That's exactly the type of on the business activity that needs to be happening in your business, right? And so as someone described it to me, working in your business is about solving the problems that are happening right now, your day-to-day problems. Somebody emails about something and now you've got a problem to solve, big or small, right? But it's an issue that needs to be solved and addressed today or this week or next week, right? On your business is about solving the problems that will come up in the future or that may come up in the future. It is really future focused, and it's hard to navigate between in and on throughout the workday. So we'll be giving out more information about this. I could tell you that it most likely is going to be affecting, so far we've seen it affect our businesses that are heavy on logistics and manufacturing, a lot of e-commerce stores, businesses that sell goods, right? Because tariffs are affecting goods, products, right? So what's interesting is recently there was a threat to impose tariffs on films. And the very first question everybody asked was, how do you impose a tariff on a film? You're talking about intellectual property. Tariffs really deal with goods and products. That's not to say that it can't be done, but what is really happening here, right? And does this mark a new way in which tariffs can be used where they reach in for service-based businesses that are heavy on intellectual property? That will matter for our clients in the future. Solving those problems in the future is a key part of shifting from in your business to on your business. All right, so look out for more of that information that we're learning about the, not just from our anecdotal thoughts and ideas, right? But from those research companies that go out there and they actually collect data and report the data regarding the trends. We're looking at that data and we'll be giving some guidance that we think is helpful for people based off of what is actually happening out there.